Today. I'm just gonna quickly share on what we're gonna talk about today, what's all about, and then we go right into it. So in today's sessions, I'm very happy to have our partner today, Freshworks, here. We'll get to them very shortly about the amazing stuff we're doing and also about our topic on social media. Before we do, just as always, a quick introduction on Dudash, what we are doing. Dudash is here to help startups with one of our biggest challenges, which is access to capital investors, because less than 1% of startups ever raise any funding. So very happy to help you on that journey. And for that, we also organize sessions like these to help you understand better how can you navigate your journey and your path. Dudash community is here to help you learn fundraising for free education, getting the support that you need for success stories, make yourself business ready through expert feedback, and also make sure that investors notice you through our global community and events just like these. When it comes to Dudash, we want to enable you to learn and educate in various ways, from connecting with people locally, finding co-founders, validating your business idea, getting feedback on your pitches, but of course also helping you on the fundraising journey. Just want to give a quick overview of what's possible. And if people are interested, you can of course chat with me on that more in detail. For anybody of you who is on the path to fundraising right now, who wants to get feedback on the pitch deck, you can just send us your pitch deck to pitch@dudash.network. We're happy to go through it, give you our feedback, and also discuss with you on the next step or to fundraising. So if you want to learn more, just check out dudash.com or get in touch with me. And I just want to give you a quick introduction to Dudash before I now go to the actual main part of the session, which is all about Freshworks and social media, how to leverage this. And before we go to our speaker, Arjun, I would just like Sumitra Deshpande from Freshworks, just to talk about Freshworks quickly and the benefits you can get from it. And then we'll go right into the session. And yeah, to you, Sumitra.
Thank you. Guys, quick check. You're able to hear me? Michael, am I audible? All right, perfect. Amazing. So guys, excited to be here. I'm going to share my screen and Michael, you need to make me co-host
or
host.
1 second. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Quick check again. You're able to see the screen? Michael or anyone? Can you just confirm if you're able to see the screen?
Yeah. We can see it.
Yeah, we can.
Doing good.
Okay, great. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Soumitra. I lead Freshworks for Startups Initiative. Excited to be here. And thanks to Michael and team and entire Dudash team for inviting us to be part of this session. Today, we are gonna, break some myths and, kind of deep dive into that social media plan and that what's your game plan when it comes to social media as a startup founder and as a growing company. And we have none other than we have Arjun Mohan, who leads social media and entire corporate marketing efforts at Freshworks, who will be deep diving into this session today. He's been doing this for almost 5 to 6 years now, having worked with multiple brands and multiple industries, and he's been holding positions of social media manager, brand lead, brand manager, and his expertise lies into what really works, what really doesn't work, and what should be your content strategy, and what should you be expecting when it comes to social media. And we are gonna try to deep dive on that a little bit. So here we go. First thing first, I feel good today to be here in front of you all. Of course, virtually. I mean, I would have loved to have this thing and this session in person, but even though we are virtual, the sentiment remains the same. The screen that you see is actually a wall in front of my desk in Freshworks office. So this is kind of that, we work with thousands of startups every month, and hundreds of founders speak to us. So you need to have that passion and same momentum when you're waking up every day and trying to make a mark in your startup journey. So yeah, I think we are also with you on that and feel excited to be talking to you today. This is going to be a quick agenda, what we are going to talk about. Very quickly, in 5 minutes, I'll cover upon what Freshworks is, what our startup program really offers to the DueDash community and overall, startup ecosystem and all you founders out there. After that, I will pass it on to Arjun. He'll deep dive into the topic and, he'll cover upon different aspects of social media and what you should be looking at, what should be your game plan when it comes to a growing company. And then, of course, last 10 minutes will be for Q&A. But I want to give you a heads up that please keep it super interactive. We want more and more questions to be coming our way so that we can answer it contextually. And we have folks in the chat who, I'll be also manning the chat. So anything you want to ask specifically to Arjun, feel free to do that. I can, stop him in between and ask those questions, right? So here we go. Quick overview about Freshworks and who we are. So Freshworks is a B2B SaaS product company. We were born in India, but global since day one. We are headquartered in San Mateo, California. Overall, 13 offices now. Our European headquarters is in Berlin. And other locations include Paris, London, Amsterdam, Sydney, Melbourne, Singapore, Dubai, and so on and so forth. We were born in 2010. 2011 is when the first product came out. So it's been overall a 10 years journey for us. We are backed by 4 key investors: Google Capital, Axel, Sequoia, and Tiger Global. We have raised 400 million in terms of our funding, and our current valuation stands somewhere upwards of $3.5 billion. We serve a community of 250,000 plus businesses across 145 plus countries now. And in fact, a couple of weeks back, we announced that Freshworks has crossed 300 million in terms of our annual recurring revenue, right? So it's a quite a hyper growth journey for us. If you look at, from the point we started back in 2011 to where we stand right now. In terms of what we do, we essentially provide SaaS products broadly into 3 categories or 3 domains. Number one is the customer acquisition or the CRM space, where we offer Freshworks CRM. Freshworks CRM is the culmination of marketing automation and the sales journey that a company would require. It covers everything around what's happening on your campaign fronts, what's happening on your website, to the point, what really matters to your sales team when they have to handle different kind of leads and, drive business for you. And this is irrespective of B2B and B2C businesses out there. The second piece where we are very strong is customer experience. In fact, Freshdesk was the very first product we started with. It's essentially a customer support software, omni-channel customer support software. So the idea is your customer would be reaching out to you from multiple platforms, but maybe different social channels, your phone, email, even website chat and stuff like that. But that one platform where you manage all these communications and handle your customer queries is Freshdesk. Extending from there, we also have Fresh Success, which is our customer success tool. It's everything revolves around the customer advocacy, the product adoption eventually, which will delve into your upselling strategy, cross-selling strategy, and stuff like that. Fresh Chat and Fresh Caller, again, amazing support or pillars to the customer experience domain, if you will. Fresh Chat is the messaging software that you see on the website. Fresh Caller is the cloud telephony system where, irrespective of wherever you are in the world, you can just buy numbers and start calling and start receiving calls for your business. And you don't need to rely on all the BPOs and KPOs. The last piece is about, as a scaling company, as a company which is at a mature stage and, kind of growing from there, how do you really manage your operational excellence? Because your efficiency also has to increase as you get more and more customers, and you need to have a repeatable model to, sustain the growth that you are experiencing, right? So Fresh Service and Fresh Team would ideally fall under the operational excellence that a company needs to build. Fresh Service is more of an inward-facing service desk, if you will. So all your internal IT service desk requirement, asset management, incident management, and those kind of things. Fresh Team is a ATS software. So as a growing company, when you want to hire talent and you are hiring for your company, that's the tool you should be looking at, right? So that's quick overview about Freshworks. And I want to, put this down in front of you that an interesting fact about Freshworks is, thanks to the cloud burst and the amazing success stories that we see around the world these days, Freshworks was one of the fastest companies in the world to reach the 100 million ARR milestone. All of this happened, I mean, the journey from 1 million to 100 million within a duration of 5.2 years. It's quite aggressive, right? If you look at some of the other names on the screen out here and some of the amazing companies that are also following the same growth trajectory, right? So one of the core reasons for that, guys, why that has happened is because of our business model or the way we looked at the industry, right? So when you look at some of the classic Silicon Valley success stories, or what we call it as the Valley framework, right? So very common aspect when companies from Valley look at scaling is, you have to start up market. You start focusing on those Fortune 500 and Fortune 2000s of the world, and then kind of move up market from there and expand your business, which is logical because that's where the money is, and there's no fact denying that. But when we started back in the days, we said, you know what, let's change the game. Let's focus on those unfortunate 5,000, 10,000s, and 50,000s of the world, which is essentially the long tail of the industry, or the small and mid-sized businesses and mid-market companies out there. So it was simple. As they scaled, we also scaled along with them, and it's been a leaps and bound growth journey for us since that point. And that, coupled with our multi-product strategy, has been proving as a strong differentiator for us, and also one of the core reasons why some of this biggest investors are backing Freshworks, right? Um, Moving on, that was a quick introduction about Freshworks and our business model. Very quickly, I want to touch upon Freshworks for startups. The reason why we are here, and the reason why we want to support the founders out there. So Freshworks for startups is a initiative where we stand for founders to help them scale faster and better, because the whole idea comes from the fact that we were also a very small company back in the days. We started as a 6-member team from the city in India called Chennai. But if you look at us now, within last 10 to 11 years of journey, we are looking at pre-IPO stage with 3,000 plus employees across all of these locations, and the number of customers that we work with. This was definitely not easy. All of this was possible because we got a lot of support, a lot of mentorship, motivation, and direction from different stakeholders in the ecosystem, right? It was all possible because it was a cohesive environment for us to grow in the ecosystem, and that's what is a culmination of that is the Freshworks for Startups initiative, right? And I'm quite excited that Dudash is also kind of following on the same direction, where they stand for founders and kind of help them grow on different aspects of the business, right? So Freshworks for Startups basically stands on 3 pillars. Two of them are on this screen. Number one being access to products. So all the Dudash community members get $4,000 credits across Freshworks suite of products, along with a white glove onboarding experience. So the idea is simple. You as a founder shouldn't be spending time, money, and resources on things which are not core to you. So you focus on what's really important for your business. We will take care of sales, marketing, and customer support for you. That's number one. Number two is mentorship and resources, where we are very strong and very much invested in terms of opening up the Freshworks mentor network, office hours, presenting you topics like these, and experts like these, like Arjun, man of the hour, who's going to take you through the social media journey when it comes to Freshworks, and what can you implement when it comes to your startup, right? So different formats, different engagements, everything around knowledge sharing, opening up our own playbooks, and connecting you to the relevant folks in the ecosystem. All of that falls under the second umbrella of mentorship and resources. The last one being access to ecosystem, where the idea is simple. We want to create opportunities and avenues for founders to work with us and all of our 200,000 plus customers as well. We do multiple things through this. We ourselves have acquired 17 companies so far. So obviously, anything that comes through the startup program, our eyes are always open. We are happy to look at them from that perspective. Having said that, we ourselves do a lot of events and a lot of avenues where founders can connect to VCs, they can connect to peers, and they can have platform to showcase their startup and stuff like that. So lots more as part of the startup program. but excited that you will be tuning in with us on this particular topic. And this program is ever growing. We already work with 400 plus partners out there, including DueDash, who's again one of our proud partners. So our partners include all the top VCs, accelerators, incubators, startup communities out there across the globe. Folks like Axel, Sequoia, YC, Techstars, and so on and so forth. And within last 1 year, it's a very young initiative, but extremely top down, including our CEO and the top management is involved in supporting the founders of the next generation. And we are already working with close to 5,000 odd startups through this program, right? So that's a quick one from me, guys. Again, just summarizing, what you get through the program, and feel free to reach out to any of us through the chat, or just reach out to Michael, and happy to work with you. You get access to products, you get access to engagement, and you get access to resources through the suite of products that I just mentioned to you, right? Moving on, the main topic of the day. Excited to welcome Arjun here. Arjun is the man who's behind, all the social media handles and every single tweet, every single content, and every single engagement that you see on the social media for Freshworks. And I think he'll be able to explain that better. What is the whole maths behind, and what's the science behind what he thinks, and how we look at it as a business. So yeah, Arjun, over to you. Arjun, you there? Are you able to?
I'm there.
Hear me?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yep, good for me.
All right, super. Thanks, Somitra. So I think it's not man of the hour. I'll probably be man of the half hour, and we'll try to squeeze this thing in 30 minutes. Somitra, if you can go to the next slide, I'll start right off. So we're here. I think it's a diverse audience. We've not really had a chance to interact, but I'm guessing we have startups at various stages, at various company size, and different stages of where you are at with your social media. But one question I want you all to maybe think about or keep in your minds right now is, when you are creating your social media strategy, and I refer to the strategy for building brand awareness more than the strategy you'll have for your lead gen. With these three elements, which are brand, platform, and consumer, which one do you focus on? If you'd be so inclined to give your responses here, it would be very interesting for me to see what people are saying. But even if you're not, just keep in mind what the question is. Oh, sorry. Am I audible? Is my voice not clear to everyone, or is it a?
No, it's clear for us. I think it is just with Lama. Lama,
right.
Let us know if you.
Oh, okay, yeah, works fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, all good.
Okay, so basically, yeah, just think about what you're focused on. I see someone say brand. Samantha, if we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So what we're going to talk about today, everyone, is a playbook or a guide or something for Freshworks that we, the social media team, put together sometime last year. We call it What Works Where. It's a guide to best leverage social media platforms. What being the content that we, the brand, create, where being the various social media platforms that we're on, which are LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We have a very good following on LinkedIn. We have around 260K plus followers right now. We're growing at around 350, 400 followers a day. And we have another 10K followers on Twitter, 8K on Instagram. But when it comes down to figuring out content for social, what works where and what goes where, that's what we try to figure out. And that's what I'll be taking you through today. Somitra, if you will go next slide. So while I asked you all the question, my answer to what I would focus on would be platform any day when it comes to social media. If I was selling cookies and chocolates, if I was selling shoes, if I was selling mobile phones, it would not change. My reason for picking platform and to focus on platform is not because I'm doing it for Freshworks. or a B2B business software brand, it applies in my head or in our head as a team. It applies to probably any brand. And I'll tell you a little more now about what I mean when I say focusing on platform. So on to the next slide. So before we get into it, there are just two things that I'd want you to keep in mind. One is that communication, and any communication, is about content, context, and setting. So it would probably not make sense while let's say you and I are both Daft Punk fans, and we're both very sad about the fact that they've split up after 25 plus years. It probably wouldn't be the best idea to talk about it at the funeral, right? And that's the thing with setting. It's one of the more important parts of communication, which sometimes gets missed. The other thing, which is not a no-brainer by any stretch of the imagination, is that there are many different social media platforms and they're all different. It seems very obvious when read like this, but when it comes to strategy, we often seem to forget that. I'll detail that a little more as we go on to the next slide. So with what I spoke about content, context, and setting, imagine the content that your brand or your company puts out on social as the content. And imagine your consumer of this content, which ideally for you would be either a prospect or a customer or somebody who evangelizes your brand. They become your context because you are looking to create content that will satisfy a need that this consumer has. The important thing here is that the setting is the platform. And what I mean by that is the important bit, which is that you are not really directly reaching out to your consumer on social platforms. You are, the social media platform is brokering your content for you. So the arrows over here become very important because the relationship goes in this way. It's content that you create. You put that content on the platform. The platform then has its own engine that decides basis relevance, basis preference for itself and for the consumers on that platform. It displays or shows that content to the consumers, and those consumers, if they like your content and if they want to engage with it, will engage with it. That's what will make them follow and engage you. So if you want your consumers to follow and engage you, because engage with you because that's what you want on social media, you need to give the platform what the platform wants, which are the stuff that you read probably on the official platform blogs, stuff you read on social media publications, and so on and so forth. Which is give the platform. So something if you can move to the next slide. So I'll go into a little more detail about what I mean when I say you need to focus on the platform. And Parth, I'll come to your question in a bit. So here's this, what you're seeing on the screen is how the LinkedIn algorithm works, right? So here's what happens. You create content. That content goes to what is a universal content filter. And that's where your piece of content is given a content quality score by the platform, not the users, right? So when you look at a report that says, okay, you know what, Facebook wants you to put 3-minute videos out. If you put a 3-minute video out on Facebook, you will get a higher content quality score. If LinkedIn comes out and says that, you know what, we want to push videos more, and if you put a video out, you get a higher content quality score when you put a video post on LinkedIn. Now, if there are problems with your content, if the content is objectionable, if it is unparliamentary, or if it's politically inciting or something that's serious, it then gets triggered. So it gets flagged, and then you have human editors who work for LinkedIn who sort of see if the content can be passed or not. And that's something we typically hear about when we in the context of Facebook. But if your content is cleared, if your content is okay, and if the content quality score is good, you'll see it goes back to the continuing display thing. If you see the green arrow, right? Now what happens is this content is shown to a sample or a small set of people. This set could be people who follow you, people who the LinkedIn platform believes would want to engage with the kind of content you have, given the terms you've used and what your URL probably redirects to. This is that first period, that first hour or two when your post goes out, and then depending on the performance, on how your post performs, which is how many likes, views, click-throughs it gets in that first period with that small sample, that's what will determine how much more your content is going to be displayed. So if you're on LinkedIn or if you're on Twitter and you're seeing one post has 5,000 impressions, the other has 10, 15,000 impressions, it's not just because the content quality was better. Yes, that's a major factor, but it's also because the platform saw more value in that content from you, right? So if you go to the next slide, Soumitra. All of what I spoke about till now, this is what you need to keep in mind, which is the summary is you give the platform what it wants. To do that, you need to know the platform. And this next part is going to be about the 5 platforms that we work on and a little bit about them. Soumitra, next slide. So we can go on to the next slide. Cool. One important disclaimer here, guys, is I can't tell you what exactly social media platform is. I mean, based on the years that I've worked on social media, I find it very hard to have one single objective definition for what a platform is, because you and your brand and your people, your employees, your product will actually make the platform what it is for you. What I have here, though, is some important points you'd want to keep in mind when you're thinking about LinkedIn. So we're talking about planning your social media strategy, and we are now looking at really understanding the platforms because we want to serve the platforms what they want. This page, which gets updated iteratively because things keep changing, is like a one-stop shop of everything you need to keep in mind. So you'll have important points about the platform, the features that the platform has, the kind of people who are typically active on that platform. And this is across, we've looked at it demographic agnostic, because depending on your brand and the age that you're catering to, it gets a little more detailed. And the last bit is content spaces. And this is a part, so everything that you'll see highlighted in yellow on the slides are things that I would recommend you do for putting your social media strategy in place, right? And the first thing I do is look at the platforms that you think are relevant to you. How you can decide whether a platform is relevant to you or not would be maybe looking at these slides. So if you can write to us, we have Soumitra on the call, we have the startup team, and we'd be more than willing to help you out, help you figure this out. Sorry, I see a question from Michael. The special use certain tactics to easily repurpose content. Yes, I'll be coming to that as well, Michael. So this is the important bit that you need to keep in mind. So when it comes to LinkedIn, you just broadly need to think of just the words value, relevance, career, credibility, and slowly start thinking of shaping your content in that fashion. As we go through this presentation, it will get a little more clear. Soumitra, you can go to the next slide. Something very similar for Facebook, but you'll see a distinct difference in the words that I've put below Facebook, which is meaningful, enjoyable conversation. So that's the feeling that Facebook wants its consumers to be left with when they consume a certain piece of content on Facebook. Whereas if you go to the next slide, Soumitra, on Twitter, it becomes more about what's real time, what's happening, what's conversational. And so again, this is not new information. This is not information that doesn't already exist out in the internet, but in the context and in the perspective of you really needing to know what the platform is so that you can maximize your social media strategy and get full efficiency out of it. You need to look at the platform in this slide. So on the next slide. Twitter, of course, is highly visual, and visual becomes very important. Like we know when we go on Instagram, we're looking at a lot of photos, but the idea of what a visual platform could be, the idea, I mean, how beneficial it can be for people who are, let's say, selling jewelry or selling cosmetics or selling things that are typically something that, is conducive to looking attractive. Instagram becomes a very, very important platform to you that way. Does a product type also play a role in choosing the platform? It does. If you have to market liquor, would LinkedIn be the best platform? It depends on what you want to talk about. So again, if you look at what you want to talk about on LinkedIn when you're selling liquor, and you're looking at maybe getting sales or getting awareness about your specific brand, it might not really work. But if you look at what LinkedIn wants, and you decided, hey, you know what, LinkedIn could work for me as a platform. What does it want? Let me figure out what it wants. And I tell you that LinkedIn is looking at LinkedIn Lives as a format that they're really pushing. Now you can look at maybe LinkedIn as, okay, so when I'm talking about liquor, what could I talk about on LinkedIn? So you have people in the liquor industry. You have people who probably create the liquor. If it's beer, then we have people who brew their own beer, and having those conversations on LinkedIn is not that bad an idea, really. You could look at the more visual aspect of it on Insta, and you could look at the more scientific aspect of it on LinkedIn. So you could make every platform theoretically work for you. So I think we go to the next slide. And this is YouTube. YouTube is a separate ballgame in itself. But again, in the way we've structured the rest of the platforms also, it's video hosting and it's your brand video channel. And one very important thing about YouTube is that it's the second largest search engine. Again, if any of you all would want to talk about this in detail, specific to your brands, please reach out to us. We have Samita on the call as well. And we'd love to help you out or work with you in any way possible. Next slide, Samita. Thank you. All right. So what we covered till now, just to quickly recap, is the part where we said we'll be focusing on platforms. This is why you need to focus on platforms. This is how these platforms work. And this is what these platforms are about. Now we come to the second bit, which is your brand, which is your product, which is your startup, which is your company, right? Next slide, Samitra. So this is where, this is what people typically talk about when they talk about their companies, but it's funny how quickly, as years go by, sometimes brands forget these things, which is who they are, what they are, why they are, where they are, when they are. And this concept of the social triangle that we sort of came up with, it attempts to help you keep that perspective on always, which is when you're talking on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, maybe TikTok, maybe some other more obscure platforms. Maybe Quora becomes a very important platform for you also. You need to keep this perspective in your mind, right? And Shamita, if you go to the next slide, there are typically two ways, or they're not typically two ways, there's typically one way, which is what I've put as approach one, which is how people look at talking about their brands on social, right? Which is, this is what you're talking B school, this is what I was talking B school, this is what you're talking communication school, which is, you know what your brand is, know the brand, know the persona, define its tonality. I think there was a question earlier from Parth, which is define what tone it needs to use, define what its elements are. And once you know that, see how it's going to translate on every social media platform, right? So you know the brand and you do the brand on that channel, which means you're focusing more on your brand and hence maybe a consumer than the channel. What we are taking is an alt approach. I don't know if it's the right approach. I don't know if it's the wrong approach. It's an approach that is sound as far as we can tell and is paying off for us again as far as we can tell, which is that the brand is nothing but an assimilation of different perspectives. So if you look at it a little philosophically, just take yourself for a second, which is, who are you? We spend an entire lifetime really figuring out who we are, but everybody has a certain idea of who they are, right? Like I know I like football, I know I like music, I know I like this kind of music, I know I do this, and this is how I look, etc. But when I go and talk to my friend, when I go and talk to my niece, or when I go and talk to my coworker, there's a part of me that's unique to each of them, correct? And each of them has their own perspective of me. So what if I am nothing but a summation of all of these different perspectives? And this exact concept can be applied to your brand as well, which is how your brand is seen on Instagram, combined with how your brand is seen on LinkedIn, combined with how your brand is seen on Facebook. A combination of all of this is probably what your brand is, right? Which means the alt approach could be just do the brand for the channel. And in that way, you can know your brand, right? If you keep this thought in mind, if you go on to the next slide, Samitra. So now I'm going very directly into what we actually did for Freshworks. Again, the main what works where a doc was a 75-80 slide, extremely comprehensive document where we covered a whole bunch of things. What I try to do is extract some of these things so that it fits into a smaller session here. Again, if you guys would want to work with us, or need some help figuring it out, please do reach out to us. These levers are what we sort of define for Freshworks, but in our opinion, you could use these levers for probably any brand at a very uber level. It's quite industry and brand and company agnostic, and of course, it needs to be tailored and customized to what your company is. These levers are the brand, employees, customers, industry space, products, tech, engineering, science, emotion, love, whatever is behind your product. So the important thing that we need to look for when we're taking this alt approach, which is to do the brand for the channel and then know the brand, is look for content within your brand. There is a lot of things you can talk about. So for example, the liquor example that we talked about earlier, there is more content that exists in your liquor brand. It's not just about the beer you're selling, it's also about the people in your company. What they do, what they don't do. It's also about experts in your industry. Like maybe I don't know about the lives of beer experts in the liquor industry. Why can't you be the brand that tells me about these things? And if you can pick the right platform where these things come out, it is definitely content that will be consumed. And if your job, if what you want out of it is brand awareness, if you want people to think about you, talk about you, maybe mention you, you just expanded the scope of your content as well. So I would tell you to identify your levers. And if you think these levers work for you, then detail them. Think about what brand your brand lever could look like. Think about what your employee lever could look like. Think about what you want to show. If you have an office workspace that's very attractive, the kind that Freshworks has, because when I came into Freshworks for my interview, I was blown away by how good it looked, right? And we do talk about it on our Instagram all the time, which is primarily our employee-facing platform, because we chose to do it that way. You could tailor it according to your brand, right? So I think we go to the next slide. Right, now we come to competition. So one thing I want to call out here is that when people think of content, and even when we all think of content, the first thing we go to is the idea, which is what the content piece is, what we're going to put on social. That comes later. First, like to quickly recap our entire presentation so far, we first identified, or we figured out, or we are working on what the platforms are about. Now we've identified what the content levers within our brand is, right? Now, before jumping into what the content idea could be, let's take a look at what our competitors are doing for two reasons. One, see what they're talking about. And second is identify spaces for yourself. So here is, I'll give you a snippet of the kind of things that our competitors are doing and the kind of things that we're doing. I've kept it minimal over here, but we identified a whole bunch of areas where we could be doing far more internally. We also identified a whole bunch of areas where we were actually doing much better than our competitors. And I say this as objectively as I can. We looked at content for a period of 6 months, and we broke down what our competitors were doing across platforms, across each of these levers or pillars that we talked about, right? So what does Salesforce do around the brand lever or pillar? What does it do around employees, customers, etc., etc.? And what I would tell you to do is do this for yourself as well. It's very important to really understand what your competitors are doing, to either keep up with them or feel good about yourself, or like generally raise the bar or set the standard wherever you're at in your stage of social media. But I would tell you to add these rows for your competitors, look at their social media platforms and break it down per lever or pillar, and do that for yourself as well. Next slide, Soumitra. What we also did after that was we broke down what each of our competitors did for each platform. So what you saw in the previous slide was like an amalgamation of everything that we saw across social. So we just looked at social, that's what you'd see, but we also went into each platform. So I've not shared a slide for each of the platforms that we worked on, but that's something you should be doing. So you should ideally, if you're active on Instagram and Twitter, you should have 2 slides with these things detailed for all your competitors. If you're working on 3 platforms, you should have 3 slides. This is very manual work. This is work that is it takes time. It is intensive, and but it pays off. It pays off when you analyze and tag your 6 months of data, and then you actually look and play around with it. When you see things actually coming together and you being able to define these into these areas, you'll see very high potential in what you could be talking about. And especially, and I honestly think that if you're a startups, if you're just maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years old, it's a great time to be doing this exercise, because before you know it, you will probably be bogged down with a lot of things as far as your startup goes, because you'll be in a phase that's extremely aggressive for you. Next slide, Sankar. Right. So the summary here is like what I said in the beginning, just find your content in your brand and do what you can to break it down, to categorize it, to think within constraints that you need to create for yourself. Can I discuss what types of content Twitter promotes? So again, depending on what, Anmol, depending on what your company is about and what people would want to know, you would want to figure out your Twitter strategy accordingly. But the important thing you need to keep in mind is it needs to be current, it needs to be real time. For instance, if there are social media trending days that do the rounds on Twitter. So let's say you are a chocolate brand and tomorrow happens to be World Chocolate Day. That is something you should definitely be looking at talking about on Twitter. If you want to engage with some influencers in your space, if they're an active component as far as your industry goes, that is something that you might want to focus on when it comes to Twitter. But again, you need to see what the platform is and then define that platform for yourself. So I wouldn't be able to give you one very clear or objective answer to this, but I'll be able to give you pointers that will help you basically put it together. If you go to the next slide, Samitra. Right. So we covered platform, we covered brand, and the consumer is, I wouldn't be an expert to talk about anybody's consumers apart from mine. And a lot of this consumer element of social media strategy and content strategy does get subsumed in your brand, because when you're creating content, you cannot create content without context. So you are factoring your consumer in. That said, do keep looking at your platform analytics too. If you're using social media tools, I'll touch upon them at the end of the slide. Do look at what they're telling you about the kind of consumers you have, what demographic. They classify it by gender, they classify it by age and regions. So that could help you. How does adding an image or video promote your content on social media? I'll quickly touch upon this point before going back to the slide, which is, so you have to look at how content has evolved on the internet over time. Sultanmi, sorry, I hope I pronounced that right. So if you remember what Twitter was right in the beginning and what Facebook was right in the beginning, I'm talking about maybe 2005, 2006. The world didn't have enough bandwidth to support video content. So it began as text. And if you think of platforms even before that, which is your Orkut or your Hi-Fi or Friendster, they began as very text-heavy platforms. We then graduated to images. We then graduated to some video content. YouTube, of course, came and changed the game. And now we're looking at a world where internet is really fast, and video allows you to push more information out per second. And that's the reason for the last 5 years now, any report you read every year, whether it's Hootsuite, HubSpot, any of these social, Star Social, any of these publications and brands that put out social media trend reports, video being up there or video going up is a very standard trend. That's because you're going to be able to pack in more information per second in a video, simple as that. But it also requires more effort. So social media is very high effort, high reward. It's a very high effort, high reward space, in my opinion. Coming back to the presentation, so I'm not focusing on the consumer so much because I'm sure everybody will have a good idea of what or who the consumer is. But to figure out the content, when we've covered platform and we've covered what your brand, what content you get from your brand, Shamatha, if you go to the next slide. This is basically a summary of everything that we've discussed so far, which is, we call it the Freshworks formula. And I'd urge you to figure out this formula for yourself. It mainly has 3 components, which is, or maybe 4, actually maybe 5. If you count the platforms as one component, if you count the levers that you want to pick as the other component, those are 2. And the other components become your content formats, your treatment, and your detailing of what we're calling actionables. This slide basically is you figure what your levers are, you figure what your platforms are, and based on what you've seen, based on what you've seen your competitors also do, identify what content formats you feel are going to be good for you on your social. You can look at your history. If you already started off, you can look at your data over the last year and see what's worked and what's not worked. You can look at very base metrics like engagement and followers as well. You could look at deep diving and trying to find correlations within your data also. I mean, that's I mean, it's a very fun rabbit hole to go into. But you want to do this for yourself, and the numbers from 1 to 24, that can actually be your content, intellectual content IP, intellectual content property or content IP, right? That is something that you would want to keep to yourself, and because that's basically going to be a game changer, which is why I've kept it away as well. So identify your formats, identify your treatment, fill out your boxes with actionables, and you basically have this one sheet you can stick on your table in front. And when you're thinking of social media for each platform, you have that in mind. So what this helps you arrive at, and everybody in your company arrive at as well, is that let's say you're having an event, right? And let's say you're having some speakers who are going to come and talk at the event, at that event. Typically, what I've seen companies do, and this is companies that I've worked for in the past as well, is if you're making a video is high quality. If a video is high quality, it means a lot of time and effort has gone into it, which means we make a very nice high quality video of, Arjun the speaker saying a small bit in the beginning and doing a call out, and then it ends with the company's end card. What Works Where says is, don't put the same video out on every single platform, because it's not about what content you want to put out, it's about what the platform wants. So if Facebook wants meaningful, enjoyable conversation, I should have ideally put a 3-minute video where I talk about, I don't know, content and the philosophy behind content, etc., etc., etc. But on LinkedIn, I could have had a very formal, just, hi, I'm Arjun Mohan, and I'm a social media leader at Freshworks, and I'll be talking about blah, blah, blah. So that's the difference that we really want to bring out. So Amit, if you go to the next slide, I'll quickly show you all in 2-3 slides an example of something we did and how we applied what works where. The context is that Freshdesk and Slack had, there was an integration that we wanted to announce and run a small mini campaign for around a week to tell the world about this integration. Here's what we did. Next slide, Samitra. So keeping our formula, the Freshworks formula in mind, I want you to focus on the blue band and what I've written there, as well as the bold italic text below the images, because your 2 touch points to catching a user on a social media platform are the post copy that you write, which is the bit that you see in bold and italic, and the content itself, right? So what we did on LinkedIn was we kept it very direct, to the point videos that highlighted functional benefits, impact, and how this partnership was going to help businesses. And that's how our post copy was packaged as well, right? But for the same campaign, next slide, Samitra, if you look at what we did on Facebook, if you remember the slide we showed in the beginning, we talked about enjoyable, meaningful, relatable. We talked about somebody called Martha, who was going to be benefiting in an emotional way because of this Slack Freshworks partnership. So it was not that her efficiency was going, we didn't focus on showing how her efficiency was going up. We focused on showing how she was going to be less stressed because of the partnership. And that's a subtle difference that would, in the long run, help you really maximize your social media strategy. If you go to the next slide, Samitra, again for the same campaign on Twitter, while the video was the same, if you look at the post copy, we had Amazon's Prime Day going out at the time, and that is the trend that made sense for us to latch onto, because on Twitter it needs to be real time. It needs to be about what's happening right now. So if people know Prime Day is happening right now, and they happen to see a post by a business software company called Freshworks talking about an integration, the hope is that they would be more inclined to maybe give. You need them to stop their thumb, basically, when it comes to brand awareness, right? And this might do it because they want to be like, oh, okay, Prime Day, what are they talking about? And then if your content is interesting enough for them, you get lucky. If you go to the next slide, Shankar. Like I said, Instagram was our, for Freshworks, we've decided, or we've gone with Instagram being our employee and our company culture focusing platform. So this is a creator that one of the employees had made, and we also, that's what we covered in the copy as well. We talked about how a bunch of happy employees enjoying the advantage of the Slack Freshworks partnership. And these are small things, they're subtle things, but this is what basically brings what I would say the base into your social media strategy. This is what really allows you to explore the subjectivity and the creativity that comes in with working with and on content. But of course, I'd say all of this is backed by data as far as possible to make it as objective as you can. If you go to the next slide, Samitra. This is just something we want to touch upon. Samitra and I deliberated about whether we should put in the beginning or the end, but I thought it makes a little more sense here because we've talked about what social media does for your awareness, because that is a part that I focus on. I work for the corp marketing team, and our OKR or our PRA or our job is to get the share of voice of Freshworks higher. But social media, I'm sure you'll be using it at various stages for in your strategy, and there are brands that spend different budgets and different amounts of time in various areas of the funnel. This slide is basically to tell you what you can be doing at every stage, and to sort of highlight the fact that all the stages are important. I would tell you to not be completely swayed by the fact that focusing on consideration and conversion is what will get you your leads, and that's what will get you revenue, because that's very true, and never stop them. But you need to keep warming the pool up, and you need to keep your inflow of potential customers, prospects, or even moving your customers from customers to evangelists. You need to keep that happening, and for that you also need to focus on awareness content. That's essentially what I want to highlight here. The flow is very simple. You begin with offering just value and support. You don't want to go into very specific details about why they definitely should buy your brand in the awareness stage. But when it comes to consideration, if you sort of know the kind of people who are looking to know a little bit more about your brand, if you send out emailers, you send out newsletters, and you have like a list of emails, let's say, you could retarget them. Here, when you're retargeting them, you could look at more consideration-based content. A more, I would say, a deeper form of consideration becomes conversion, which is you offer them incentives, you offer them offers and discounts, and you retarget them even more with content that will be even more useful for them, till you move them to loyalty and advocacy, which will be the dream, because they actually become part of your community, and they start pushing your product for you. And there's no, and they do it right. For instance, we are using Sprout Social as our social media tool right now. They have absolutely nothing to do with this presentation. But since I'm talking about social media tools, I would go out on a limb and say that they're a really powerful company who are doing really good things. Now, if Sprout were to be working on their social strategy and they were to come to me as a customer and say, hey, would you want to maybe do something with us? I'd be more than willing. And that's what you want to move your customers to, right? The very last bit of this presentation is, sorry, the next slide, is if you're looking for it, what you need to set up, manage, and execute your social media. These are some very, very broad pointers, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it in detail if that's what you want. These are the pointers, which is what your crew should look like, which is I would recommend, and you don't have to get this all at one time, but I would say for basic housekeeping, you would want 1 to 3 content writers. You would want a creative team, which is a video team and a graphic designing team and an illustrator or a designer. So a strength of 2 to 4 people in this team is very beneficial. One point I want to highlight here is that you should keep in mind that when it comes to these resources and it comes to your social media strategy, it will be more expensive to be poor What I mean by that is to postpone or to delay hiring more people, let's say, for your creative team when it comes to social, could be not in your best interest when it comes to maximizing your social media strategy, right? And you'd also want to have a data analyst at play. Of course, you can have somebody who does a lot of all of these things, and they can be somebody managing social media. It could be you as well if you're just starting off. But you should be working towards setting up your team like this. The 6 elements that are very important when it comes to keeping things in mind when it comes to social media strategy are: you need to have a content calendar, and there's a lot that goes into content calendar. But you need to know what you're doing today, tomorrow, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, ideally maybe a month from now also, so that you're not always on your toes. Today you're working on content, let's say 2-3 weeks from now, so you have some breathing space. You need to be trend spotting. You need to be looking at your competitors. You need to be analyzing their content. You need to be looking at what content they're putting out. You need to be looking at what PR they're doing. You need to look at your own content as well, analyze them, really use the platform metrics. Do you use the CSV downloads that you get of the post that you did? Play around with Excel and see what more you can do. Figure out relevant metrics for yourself, understand and know why you're going with these metrics at which stage and when you want to transition to something new. So if you're starting off, maybe you need a whole bunch of followers for your industry and your brand, makes sense. But when are you going to move to looking at deeper metrics like click-through rate or video views? That's something you should have some visibility on. And like I just did, a few minutes ago, I would recommend when you are at that stage to have a social media scheduling tool. It also helps align your entire team to the calendar as well as what work is happening, as well as giving you some very powerful tools to make your content and your strategy better. In terms of study, in terms of what you need to keep up with, do look at the official platform blogs. There are things that you might miss, which are very, very useful. Look at a lot of social media publications. There are lists on Twitter that I could share with you as well. That would be very good for you to keep up with. You, of course, while I focus more on awareness, you definitely need your performance marketing and your digital marketing essentials to be in place. Be comfortable with the terminology as well as how the mechanism and how these things work. And content trends. So human behavior, platform updates, what is new age content, what is content going to look like a few years from now? These are some things that are going to really help you stay ahead of the curve. So you don't want to be looking at what people are doing now. You want to be ideally theorizing or taking a punt on what people might be doing in 2022 or 23. So those are some important points for you. I think that's the end of my presentation. I answered a few questions during, but if there are any more questions you want me to answer, please feel free to shoot them out. Samita, I think the next slide is a small bit that you want to talk about. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Arjun. Folks, I hope you got the relevant inputs and you enjoyed that. I'm not sure how much time do we have. I think we have a minute or so.
Yeah, I think if there's one more, like some more question, we can just quickly go through them. Just checking, maybe we're on that, like we can still like a couple more minutes, but if you guys have still like a couple more minutes, but just checking first if anybody has a question even.
Yeah. Arjun, do you want to pick up any specific one in terms of question? Maybe take up that.
So I answered a few of them.
I think there was, I think the one we missed was, I think, from Path on how can we decide in which tone to write the content.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So Path, about deciding which tone to write the content in, I think it begins with really knowing what your brand is. That said, if let's say you are not sure or you don't have your brand book or brand guidelines sort of defined, you'd want to look at how maybe your competitors or how brands are typically talking about on that specific platform, on LinkedIn or on Twitter, on Instagram, and sort of mold your idea into that fashion. So for instance, if you're seeing that, a little witty or a little informal content on Twitter does seem to be doing the rounds and that's what people pick up on, And if you don't have very specific brand guidelines in place, then go right ahead and take a punt at that. But what I'd urge you to do is be consistent with the tonality that you're using. So, and the other part is the important thing to know about tonality is that you need to be able to separate your tonality and what you think about it from what the brand would say or want to think about it and say it in that fashion. So if your brand is one that is talking to 15 to 20-year-olds, but is maybe a brand that talks as a 35, 40-year-old, you'd want to keep that in mind. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think with that, don't want to. Oh wait, I think there's like. Oh, there's one last question. Maybe like if you still have time, let's just do this, and then I think we conclude. From
Sure.
Bongo Musa on like which kind of language to use. On like a actual like language, like English, another language, that way.
I think it's an interesting question. And Freshworks as a global company, we have audiences in Europe, in North America, in MENA regions as well. We as a company put English content out, but Bongo Musa, for you, I'd say if your audience is non-English, then you would not, and if your focus is on a non-English audience, then go right ahead and use the languages that your prospects and your customers would be interacting with. And I think in a lot of cases, these mainstream platforms, the ones that I covered, they are not the go-to platforms for people who are posting non-English content. So even in Europe, for instance, you have platforms that are more specific to Europe. You might have those in your region as well, and you could look at trying them out also. There's one more from Anmol. I'll just take that question, which is, how does the target audience age group have an impact on the platform you use? I'd take a punt at giving an analogy, which is, so I play football. Imagine 18-year-olds playing 11-on-11 game on a field versus 40-year-olds playing a 5-on-5 game on a field. So the way, they're still playing football, but the way they're doing it is a little different. Their movement is a little different. And accordingly, all ages exist on all platforms, right? So you have 25-year-olds, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 60, and even targeting, you're allowed, or you're given the option to pick those ages, right? So as long as you're creating content and you're targeting it, or you're wanting to serve it to the age that is relevant to you, and they're getting it, you're in a good place.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very, very much, Arjun, Sumitra, and also the whole team at Freshworks for your time to share your insights on social media. It's a very valid topic. It's very interesting what's happening right now. Everybody on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, using these different platforms to create value, and especially creating these high quality relationships, which would be helpful for business. It was a very interesting session for me. I learned a lot. And also for all of you, if you haven't used Freshworks products so far, you should definitely check them out. We have the Freshworks credits for the Dudash community members. If you're interested, just send me a message on Dudash itself or just via connect@dudash.com, and I will tell you all the details all about it. Thank you all for joining. And again, thanks a lot to Freshworks. And yeah, wish you all a good evening and talk to you soon. Anything else from Sumitra? Anything else on that? Yeah.
No, thanks for having us, Michael. Yeah.
Man.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.